And so it might have something to do with internecine battles going on there.
I'm so glad you mentioned this because I grew up in Puerto Rico, so I know that the IRS is headquartered there, and people just don't believe that.
Oh yeah, and the symbolism in the flag and in the state arms of Puerto Rico are very, very telling. They have Masonic symbols in their flag, on the flag, and in their state arms. And when you go back to the history of Puerto Rico, it was actually founded by the Knights Templars, Masonic order, and they became known as pirates of the Caribbean. And so they were the pirates that were robbing on the high seas, which gives us our whole concept of maritime admiralty law, the law of the high seas. So there's a whole world of hidden stuff, concerning banking and the bank foundations in the Caribbean. Yeah, so big story.
Yes, and let me start with the audience questions. Then these are coming from all over the world. You're really going to enjoy them. What is the difference between a British man and an English man specifically?
Well, English is just a bloodline. It's tracing a particular bloodline in Europe, but British comes from the word berith, B-R-E-T-H. Berith is a contract or a covenant in Hebrew. So a berith is a contract. And ish, I-S-H, in Hebrew is either a man or men, can be singular or plural. So when you put berith and ish together, it becomes British. And British simply means the covenant man, or men of the covenant, or men of the contract. And this is why today, in Western civilization and commerce and maritime law, you have to sign contracts, men of the contract. And it implies that there's a contract between parties for commerce. But the whole idea of the whole concept of the contract goes back to a contract between Masonic orders, between God and man. Contracts are a very ancient idea. And so the British, we've been given this story for years about the lost tribes of Israel, and that Britain and America are the Ephraim and Manasseh, which gives us the lost tribes of Israel, and Israel was God's chosen people, and they had a contract with God, so they were the British. All of that goes back to British Israel World Federation and the contracts with God and the contracts in commerce. You might want to do some research on the web on the subject of British Israel World Federation and look into that whole concept of contracts in commerce and contracts between God and man to rule the world. Very interesting stuff.
What do you know of the Constitution being converted to a trust so that the powers that be could change laws behind closed doors?
Oh yeah. Well, what a subject that is. Yeah, there's actually now a lot of information on that now out on the web, and a lot of people are talking about it. I started talking about it quite a few years ago when I first heard it from experts. I again, on this subject and virtually everything else I would talk about, I'm not the world's foremost authority on anything. But what I bring to the table ever is just, I've been in the company of experts. So I like to say I'm not an expert on anything, but I know the people who are. And I've been in their company, and I've sat for hours and hours over years of listening to really brilliant people explaining Constitution, explaining the corporation, the privately owned corporation called United States, as opposed to the Republic of the United States of America, which has nothing to do with the corporation. And all of that happened right about 1868 when the Republic was finally dissolved. It started to be dissolved and was heading for real trouble in 1848 with the coming of the what we call today the Communist Party. 1848, it was called the League of Just Men. And the League of Just Men were a group in New York and in London who came together to formulate an idea to socialize the whole world, and they called it the League of Just Men, sounding something like the League of Extraordinary Gentlemen with Sean Connery.
Right.
And in that movie, they were all Masons. But the League of Just Men became known as the League of Communists. And in 1848, they came out with their Communist Manifesto to overthrow all legitimate governments. And that was given birth to, that whole idea of communism was given birth to in New York and London. So it doesn't surprise me now that what is going on nationally in our country, the corporation has taken over the way they did it. They had a civil war caused by the League of Just Men and the bankers in Europe. And so after our Civil War, the whole idea of the Civil War was, the bottom line was to break up and destroy the United States of America Republic. And it didn't destroy it off the earth, but it did destroy the superstructure of what was originally put there by the founding fathers, so to speak. And so after 1868, the United States of America as a republic no longer existed. It became a corporation. A corporation took over. And from what I have heard from the experts is that the two are still today legitimately in power. The original Constitution for the Republic is still a legitimate document. It is still in operation today if you know how to access it. But if you are a citizen of the United States, then you have no access to the Constitution or the Bill of Rights by law. It's very cleverly done, but people want to talk about the Constitution and the Bill of Rights. You have no Bill of Rights or Constitution if you are a citizen of the United States. That's the law. If you go back and read the court cases, starting back in 1868 to probably right around 1900, there were many court cases that clarified that. And so I've got enormous amounts of material stored, on hard copies and in folders of all the documentation on that, how we were very cleverly taken out of the constitutional republic and quietly slipped into a corporate state in 1868 after the Civil War. And there's something on my website. If you go on my website to links and scroll down in the links till you come to government and commerce and government. And the first two entries under commerce and government are my links. One is USA versus U.S., or maybe U.S. versus USA. But there's two of them, part one and part two. And that website I found to be the most interesting of all the hundreds of websites out there dealing with this subject. All you've got to do to look at and to really get into this subject is just go on the web and put in the word commerce game, and all kinds of websites will pop up explaining the 1868 corporation, how it was founded, what the difference between the United States and the United States of America is, and it's all right there. And again, as I said, go on my website and scroll down to the link, scroll down to commerce and government, and I've got about maybe 6 or 7 websites on the commerce game, on U.S. versus USA, and it's all right there. But I would suggest you go through that very first one, because that is filled with all that information, documents, how it happened, explains it step by step. So it's a very, very big story, and it's not a story that I am particularly interested in. It's my interest in that was many years ago when I began to hear the experts explaining this. It answers a lot of questions that I had in my mind about biblical things which I have been looking at, and why certain political movements such as Nazism, communism, fascism, why these movements were being financed out of London and New York. But once you understand the corporation called United States is a privately owned operation, and they have a worldwide agenda, and they have now, since 1868, they have now confiscated the monies of the world, the raw materials of the world, so they have the wherewithal to do anything they want to rape the whole human race, because we've been asleep and watching basketball so long that we didn't realize that these people were very, very clever, and they have been putting together their power base.
And for more information on this, going to Jordan Maxwell's website. Also, if you folks refer to my interview with Ralph Epperson from last year, we talked a lot about this, the fact that you don't need to have a Social Security card, and when you volunteer to get it, you immediately become